Frankly, school sort of made me personally doubt on myself more.
What is the goal that we both have sat today and decided to start off this podcast?
It's more about introspection for me.
So we want to grow in this journey. We want people to grow with us.
Crafted was not something that just suddenly happened. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to rule and not dictate.
Do you think that waiting for those 9 to 12 month period while you were gaining other experience was that very important? Are you fortunate for it, or is that a regret that you have?
In the first month of starting Crafted itself, we spent somewhere around 2 to 3 lakhs on things, right? I couldn't have done it if I had.
Describe Crafted.
Crafted is basically an extension to my freelancing, something that I always wanted, always, I can't stress enough, wanted to take it forward to. We just don't create, we narrate.
Do you choose your ambition or do you let your fears hold you back?
अगर saved up नहीं है, खत्म हो जाता है, investors भी नहीं मिल रहे, तो छोड़ दो company. But you can't do that.
So, Navni Jain, welcome to the first episode of this podcast. There are basically three main topics that we will be covering throughout all the episodes. It's about entrepreneurship, design, and creativity, majorly in the ad space and in the media field itself. I would ask you first is, what vision do you have for this podcast? What is the goal that we both have sat today and decided to start off this podcast?
I think it's more about introspection for me because a lot of times you take in a lot of information either from someone else's podcast or just talking to someone else, but we don't really introspect on what we have taken actually or what we have learned from that conversation. We went to that meetup. I don't think so we even sat together and discussed what we learned, right? So when we do these kind of podcasts, it gives us a medium to discuss more, to explore more, to learn more. And it's not just a learning for the viewer, it's also learning within us. So
That's very true. I think one more goal that we have for this podcast is to share our experience as people that are starting an agency. We are at quite an early stage of starting. We're not even crossed 1 year. So our goal is to communicate to all of the people that are listening that they are not alone in the difficulties that they face. It's not rare obstacles that people have to cross. There are solutions out there, and the entire struggle is to find the right solution.
I think a lot of people start doing podcasts when they get that to a level. Let's say if your industry does really well or your agency do really well, right? Then you start making podcasts from there, probably 3 year down the lane, 4 year down the lane, or 5 year down the lane. But you don't really see an agency or a person who is doing a podcast who runs an agency actually grow from scratch, from zero. I have seen a couple of videos like that, but again, they don't really share the exact learnings or their difficulties or what they're facing or how to solve it as well, right? And there are a lot of people at this point of time want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't really know how to start. Even I didn't know how to start, frankly, but I learned a hard way. And I tried to search a lot of videos on YouTube or even different platform where I can get information, but I couldn't get the exact information that I wanted. So probably this could be a medium that people can learn or just listen to and enjoy. Maybe.
Exactly. So we want to grow in this journey. We want people to grow with us. And as the episodes go ahead, we will be discussing a lot of ideas that are inspiring in the field. We will have a lot of guests that will teach us, that will teach our listeners and viewers. And we have a lot of plans for the podcast itself. But yes, that's why I'm excited to start off. Today, we are going to be talking about starting off on your entrepreneurial journey. Today, we are going to focus on the bare minimum, what you need to start off with. We will, as we go further in the next episodes, we will cover bases from beginning to different things. And today, it's focused on this one person that has just gotten out of their 12th class, that have just gotten their UG degree, PG degree, masters, or just are done with their current job. And today they want to start off something of their own. You have just crossed this is stage. So I'll start off by giving a short introduction of you, of Avni Jain as a person. Avni Jain is one from many nationalities. She has spent quite a time in Karnal, in quite a time in Bangalore now, quite a time in Jeddah itself, in
Kolkata
Jaipur,
as well.
huh?
Kolkata as well.
Imagine.
Yeah, but I was very smart.
And she has studied commerce.
I mean, you don't really
in
have to
plus
put
two.
that into account.
You don't,
Yeah,
right?
Doesn't matter what I've
Trust.
studied.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you learn is going with that 10 plus 2 years of education don't really hold that much weightage. I didn't learn anything prevalent to what I'm doing right now.
I have. It's not like I have not. You do learn a lot of things,
Yeah.
and you do grasp a lot of things. Now, my sister is in 9th grade, and when I talk to her, I realize that yeah, I have learned certain things, right? Your science, your maths. People say maths में trigono वगैरह काम नहीं आता. ठीक है, नहीं आता, but plus minus तो आता है ना. And those trigonometry, I always question them. If you don't know your basic maths, how you gonna? Now we are running an agency, right? We need basic maths.
Yeah.
Very basic. Now, if I'm talking to a client and if he's doing maths like this, if he's taking out percentages like that, I feel like okay, I'm dumb. And he asked me, now I'm able to actually reciprocate it with the correct number. I feel so proud of myself.
Yeah.
The moment he's like, okay, kitna 10%, kitna hua, kya hua? I know my 10%, how much it is, right? The same thing. What I believe this, I'm not saying everyone has to or everyone believes it, or even like professors, I'm not being like technical over here, but I think trigonometry help in a way that if you can solve this, you can do your basic maths.
Yeah.
It's like that, right? It makes you better in maths. And having done abacus, I don't know, I think 2 years or something, I feel that actually helped me.
That is very true. I think these 10 plus 2 years feel like a long time, but realize hota hai ki like this is your base. These 12 years were your base, not in just academic purposes, but your social skills, your basics of learning English, mathematics, Hindi.
I mean, for me, in that context, it wasn't important.
Yeah, for everyone would differ though.
Yeah. For me, there was no personal growth there. For me, it was all book knowledge and someone who can score decent amount of grades, who can do well in school. Someone from that sort of thought I was. Frankly, school sort of made me personally doubt on myself more.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, than how it was for you.
Okay.
It made you confident. I wanted to be more confident than I was at that point of time, but it sort of like pulled me down into multiple. There were like 10,000 things that actually happened. But I can't point every single thing out.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't like the same experience as yours, and that's gonna be with everyone, whoever is doing school or done with school, graduated or anything, right? But for me, it wasn't the same thing. It did make me confidence in terms of my math skill set and probably like something else. But I wasn't people's person. I was not at all someone who would go out and be or make friends also. I had a very close group of friends. I used to not talk to a lot of people. I was not at all confident. I used to hide when teacher would ask any question like nahi mujhe nahi khada hona types.
So after those years, after those troublesome years, Avni Jain opted for public space design in Shishti, which is a very famous design college in Bangalore. And if you're someone who's remotely interested in design, you would know of Shishti. So those were 4 years. That's where I'd say a lot of personal growth happened. Then Avni Jain then shifted to, did some time in an architectural firm, did her internship in an architectural firm, but things led her to picking a social media strategist role in a marketing agency, in a marketing startup, very small at the time. Avni Jain grew that startup, ran for 3 years, and Avni Jain also was there for 2.5. Shifted to a different studio, which was more focused towards production and design. Held a more creative head role there before you had enough confidence to take the plunge?
No, I think crafted was not something that just suddenly happened.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always
Mm.
wanted to rule and not dictate.
Mm.
I wanted a good team of people where we create amazing content, meaningful content, and we tell right stories.
Oh.
So that has been always my vision. Even when I was in agency working, my work, even if I go back to my work when I was in 12th, also trying to do something related to design, everything, each and everything, I started from telling a story.
Yeah.
So I always had this plan of having something of my own. I just didn't know what. But during the course of this 2 years of having not exactly, yeah, like worked in an agency, it sort of gave me a direction. Plus, my freelancing was one thing that actually gave me like a proper direction towards crafted. So it wasn't something that just
happened.
Born out of nowhere.
Mm.
It was like a 9 month planning. It was a proper 9 to 12 month planning.
That's important. You need to plan.
Yeah.
I think one thing that people definitely need before wanting to jump into like having a startup is a good solid plan, especially in terms of your personal side of things,
Right.
your personal finances and stuff. And that is what scares a lot of people. You don't really, you think of a startup when you're at this stage where you're burnt out of, either you're burnt out of what you're doing right now, or you're ambitious of what you want to do, right? You have this inkling of a startup idea, and what scares you for the longest time is if you do jump into it, you don't really have a backing, right? You don't have that much saved up, and you don't really have any kind of earnings. You don't really have any kind of financial fallback. What do, right? You have this idea, you don't want to lose the ambition over the idea, so you're in this final, like in this dangerous thought loop where do I just go for it, do I just YOLO it, or do I wait, do I look for a co-founder, do I look for someone who can sponsor me, do I go back to my parents? And was that kind of fear, was that something that pushed you along the 9 to 12 months? Do you think that waiting for those 9 to 12 month period while you were gaining other experience, was that very important? And are you fortunate for it, or is that a regret that you have?
I think I'm very, 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 very much fortunate for it, because in the first month of starting Crafted itself, we got lights, we got production lights, we spent somewhere around 2 to 3 lakhs on things, right? And I couldn't have done it if I hadn't planned for those 9 to 12 months, and still I had cash flow going normally. It wasn't like something that I was stretching onto or taking financial burdens over me, right? So what I had planned was, so I was doing freelancing, right? So I didn't spend a single penny of freelancing on me. I was also working on the side. I worked, I spent whatever amount or salary I was getting from that freelancing I did. I saved up that money. I had good chunk of money to start a firm. After 9 to 12 months, I started with the same amount of money, and starting a business firm does not really need too much of investment, frankly, right? Like unless D2C business or anything. So didn't have much investment there. So whatever cost I had to put together to start a business, like some basic cost, registering your firm and stuff like that. Yeah, that was there, and that could have been dealt with my savings. And I did not take it from my parents, or there was no co-founder or anything like that. So that planning had to be done before. And someone who loves planning and being organized, that was a fortunate decision for myself. And because if I don't have plan, I'll go haphazard.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I just go mad. Plus, I obviously had a huge backing from my parents. Anything I need, the push, the motivation, everything I had from my parents. Even if I was low on money, they would obviously support me, right? But my own conditions to start a startup was to start it on my own money and not take it from my parents. And that was just a thing that I, like an oath I took from while starting the startup, right? until date, whatever equipments we have, whatever it is, it's all either my freelancing money that had saved up or crafted money, right? So I feel it really depends on the kind of direction you're going ahead with. For a social media marketing agents, you don't really need production team or productions equipments and stuff. So you can very start with a very bare minimum amount. But also because when you're starting your own startup, you cannot really go and work with someone else or under some agency unless and until you have a good bond and be like, okay, fine, it's fine. You're starting your own startup, you work with me also. That's a completely different thing. But you need to take in consideration that you need 6 months of cash flow with you, because when you start an agency, it just does not boom, right? You have your own difficulties, you have your own things that goes down, up, everything, right, left, everywhere, right? So I personally recommend to every single person, whoever thinks of starting an agency, 6 months cash flow and 6 months saved up for yourself, for your own kharcha or for your own financial responsibilities, right? Not everyone has a lot of family backing and everything, right? So at that point of time, yes, you need to do that 9 month planning, 12-month planning that I did. So I freelanced and I saved up and then I started crafting. It was helpful for me. And personally, I feel it's very difficult to just leave a job and just completely turn into freelancing. I suggest don't do it unless and until you have 6 months of saved up income for yourself. And then if you have, then why not? Good thing that I actually planned everything out and organized everything out, and that's what is showing to us right
That's
now.
very true. After this planning, we were confident to take the step and start Crafted. I think we had a safe launch. We didn't have an impulsive launch, which many people want. You know, this trend of taking a risk to achieve your dreams.
I mean, it's
seems
good. It's
very
it's
shiny.
not. It's shiny, and to become an entrepreneur, to rule, or to not to be your own boss and stuff. Everything looks really pretty
nice.
and good.
Makes for a
right?
great story. Yeah.
It's a great story, but I don't have a superstar story in my life or a starshine story in my life, because I have actually sat and planned everything out. And I literally have planned everything out because I have a notebook that I've planned everything out. And
Yeah, that's important.
yeah, and it's not something that just planned out in my head.
Yeah.
I've planned it out, writing that this is the month I want to start, and this is how I'm gonna go about it, right? And yeah, even though I kept it little secretive from people, but I feel like that's the right way I was going about, because that's where my thoughts were taking, or my thoughts were sort of germinating there. So I think planning always works. It's not a old school thing.
Yeah.
People shouldn't fear. If you cannot plan, please take help with planning. Whoever is good at it, your friend, your best friend, your colleague, or your parents, or any of your family member. You shouldn't be afraid of planning. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
Move to plan B.
That's another thing that holds back people, or like even for me, when I'm planning for the smallest things, what holds me back from planning is like, what if things go wrong? Then I, as it is, have to improvise. No, you don't.
But what if things go right?
If the proper planning is not just having a plan A, but like plan C,
C.
D, E, F. Like you need to plan the smallest things, and you take your time to plan. Right? Things always opportunities seem short term. But nothing is so short term that you can't sit for 2 hours and just plan for it. This is one of the biggest learnings that I've also learned in this journey. Like when I was a freelancer working with teams, there was like a project manager who would take over the planning. All I had to do was wake up early in the morning and show up for the shoot. And even when I was in the agency, there were people that would think
Plan
of the
for you.
idea, think of the caption and stuff. Everything for like props and lighting and everything was available to me, not set up. Right?
Basically, everything was planned for you.
Exactly.
You had to just execute.
Yeah. I had to just plan for the lighting and the kind of shoot, and that's it.
But mainly execute it.
When you're shooting short form content, especially around products, where more focus is on about getting the content out at the right time rather than the quality being different and stuff, things sort of streamline themselves, and it just becomes if not A, then B, if not B, then C. And it just comes down to these three. Everything is just a variation of these three. Do that for a couple of months. You're not really planning anything. You're just going there and you look at, oh, this is
You
a
get
C.
used to it.
Yeah,
so
this is a
much.
C kind of situation. I'll just do this, shoot.
Yeah, it's like having personalized emails by having those as templatized ones.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
as a creator, as someone who's doing this out of passion, that's a very non-rewarding system.
I mean, frankly, as a creator or a creative person, I feel like not a second person cannot help you being creative. You are the own god of letting yourself bring creativity in your life. You cannot blame if you're working under an agency. You cannot blame the agency. Oh, I'm not being creative enough because my agency don't let me. I feel like that's such a wrong statement.
So I have a fun challenge for you. I want you to describe Crafted in under 30 seconds. So take your time. And I think we recently went to a networking event where we all had to give our elevator pitches, which are 30 seconds. I'm pretty sure every one of them went over that time. I didn't.
Even I didn't.
Okay, so then it should be easy for you.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I know what I'm.
You already have the definition. Okay, tell me.
So, Crafted is basically an extension to my freelancing, something that I always wanted, always, I can't stress enough, wanted to take it forward to, but never knew how to. So, this is Crafted. It's a creative studio where we have main three verticals, which is branding, marketing, end-to-end marketing, and production. Again, end-to-end production. Anything you want to produce, we produce it for you. So this is basically Crafted, and what we do, we produce really high quality production content, and we tell a story. We just don't create. We narrate. So a lot of people would create content, right? We narrate content. And that's where I wanted Crafted to be, crafting stories or crafting content. So everything is a craft, and I wanted to bring in that craft to our journey, and hence Crafted was born.
That is very correct. Yes, that's. We wanted to stand out not just as creators or professionals. We wanted to stand out as storytellers with a special emphasis on the visual medium. And in our journey, having worked with so many brands, I think we have been able to bring out their core story out to the people. We have this belief that people don't relate to products or services, people relate to brands and personalities. Having been able to bring so many people's stories and narratives out there, it's been a component that pushes us to strive to do better every day. And yeah, that is quite special. So yeah, I think for me also the vision for Crafted doesn't deviate a lot from that. But as you mentioned, that Crafted has been something that you wanted to start for a long time. Not just Crafted, but creative studio, a studio that stands out from the crowd.
It's not even about creative studio. Frankly, I just wanted to start something of my own where I had the voice to narrate whatever I can. I don't have to narrate other people's story, or I don't have to narrate someone who are subordinates, or someone who is above me sort of stories. I wanted to narrate the story that I want to narrate and the way I want to narrate. And that is something that I wanted to bring in. But before that, I had to do a lot of work on myself. I had to work on myself to narrate those stories, right? Because everything needs refinement. Even a diamond, right? It needs to be refined to be sold to people. It's the same thing. I had to refine my skills. I had to find my skills, what I can start, and how do I do it. These two questions were always there with me, and I couldn't answer them until I think almost 1.5 years back. I was pretty sure what I wanted to do. And this is where I am, and this is what I have been wanting and willing to do.
So, as a person, you've had quite an interesting journey, especially in terms of the occupation that you've been in. You took commerce and maths in your 11th, 12th. Then you switched, studied public space designing in Shishti for 4 years. Then you had a brief stint in an architectural firm, but then you switched to social media strategist From there, you switched to designing, graphic
Yeah.
designing, and then from there, graphic designing majorly for social media. From
Yeah.
there,
And then branding.
and then branding, and now switch entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So, lot of switching, and to finally reach this end goal, I think my biggest question here would be, how did you plan your transition through all these? A lot of people are stuck doing what they are doing right now, a regular 9 to 5 for a corporation that they don't want to do, or it's a student in school studying what they don't want to study, or a student in college that has suddenly been inspired to do something else, right? But they're stuck, they're doing what they want. You making that sudden switch is a story of fairy tales, I would say. Only in shows and movies you see someone going flip a switch and they've started an agency. Okay, they're struggling, they don't have food to eat and all, but suddenly something works out for them and everything turns very jolly and good. That's not reality. That's not reality. If you, in my experience, if you take that plunge, if you're like, oh, you know what, I don't want to finish my degree, I'll just start a job and everything, there's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of struggle which, as I have learned, with proper planning, does not have to be. It's not necessary for you to struggle to become a successful entrepreneur. Struggle in that manner. There are struggles every day, but I'm talking about that particular struggle. So you are someone that I witnessed transition with a proper plan. So I would like you to share with us a sort of a brief summary of that plan, if you can.
So I never planned to switch so much, frankly. When I was in college, I thought I'll become an architect or interior designer, urban designer, somewhere around the same domain, right? But then I switched marketing. When I did social media marketing, I didn't know I would switch again, right? I didn't know I would be a graphic designer. I genuinely didn't know I would design for brands. I didn't know. So I did not plan that as well. But I switched. I didn't switch. I was made to switch because apparently I was good at designs. At that point of time, I didn't know. Yes, I was good into particular creativity. For example, interior designing I've done. Okay, that's designing, creative. I was a creative person, but I didn't know I could design brands or I could design packaging or logo, all these things. I didn't know, but probably people saw that in me. And yeah, so I switched. I was made to switch. I was happy about it though. And then I continued doing that. I don't know, for some reason, I gained so much confidence doing that. And then I started entrepreneurship, which is basically an extension to my freelancing only. There's nothing that I suddenly thought of and I wanted to just like, okay, let's start. It was nothing was sudden for me. And all these switches were not also planned for me. And not something that I actually planned for it. But yes, my switch from freelancing to entrepreneurship was a planned switch, because I feel if I don't plan for that, then I would have been in this immense pressure of financial decisions, financial control, everything related to finance. And that planning actually helped me to put my cash flow to proper use in terms of freelancing, also entrepreneurship also.
So if I were to ask you, let's say I'm a 21-year-old, I have I'm a 22-year-old. You know what? I'll take that 1 year apart. I have graduated from my UG. I have done my 1 year as an intern or as a junior employee somewhere. And I want to now switch to entrepreneurship. So what are the main areas that I need to plan around to make this transition as smooth as can be?
See, no one is too old to be an entrepreneur, frankly, and no one is too young to be an entrepreneur. You're not the right fit for entrepreneur if you have never worked under someone or under an agency or a studio. That's something I feel. That's my opinion, because I have been through it and I've seen people who hasn't worked somewhere, how they struggle as well, right? So I frankly believe if you are 22-year-old and you just graduated, at least work 1 or 1.5 year agency. I wouldn't suggest MNC kind of jobs. I would suggest like a startup where you get to hands-on do every single thing. For example, you're a video editor, you're a production, you're a person who heads production, right? So for you to understand basic thing, you need to get your hands dirty, right? You need to design also for a startup. You need to handle their social media also. You need to handle work on video edits also. That's where you get your hands dirty. That's where you understand what you're good at. That's where I also got my hands dirty. I was an architectural intern. I was an interior design intern. I was also a social media strategist, and before that, I was social media strategist intern. So I did my internship almost for a year because I kept switching, and I was okay with that. If you're an entrepreneur, if you want to start a business, you need to understand at least A to C of business, right? If not rest of the things, you will understand the rest of the things in your own journey. But at least where to start, how to start, and what is wrong and what is right. Right? Wrong, right is something that's a very out there kind of words. Probably what you can do, what you shouldn't do, right? You learn so much. You learn what is good manager and what is bad manager, who are good managers or who are bad managers. People have debate right now on LinkedIn, right? Bad managers and good managers. But what about it? If you haven't experienced that, you would be worst manager. You'll be the best manager. Who knows? But why would you want to take a risk as a bad manager and destroy your own company? You cannot grow. Even if your work is amazing, you're producing the best quality of work in the entire world, or you have the cost that suits the client, you have numerous clients. If you don't keep your team happy, you're not going anywhere. You cannot. Right? And you are not the one who is producing work for the clients. You're not the one who is producing the work. Your team is the one who is producing the work, right? So you need to keep your team content and happy.
But that's after entrepreneurship has started.
No, this is something that you need to learn beforehand.
Right.
If you don't know this, how can you you even call yourself entrepreneur if you don't know how to keep your team happy? Entrepreneurs, you cannot just you cannot just be one single person in the team, right?
So teamwork, team coordination, like working with other people.
So important, yeah. And
I think just coexisting with people.
Exactly,
I think that is
how to talk to them, how to
Yeah.
get the work done is also a skill set that people pick up way later after they have gone through right? But you should be able to pick it up while you are working under someone. That's the reason you're working under someone while you have a intention of becoming an entrepreneur, raising your own child, which is an agency or studio, whatever you want to, right? So all these small bits and pieces actually comes from the learning that you learn while you are under someone, especially in a startup, because that's where you put in hands in every segment. Right? If you're an MNC or a bigger company than this, you'll get a role. You'll be limited to that. Probably you'll be limited to the kind of people you work with. That's all. Right? I'm not against it. I never thought of working in that sort of situation. I always wanted to work in a startup. And I'm not very sure how it could benefit you a lot than startup, because I haven't experienced that. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Probably we might know later from someone else, and try to grow in that startup. Don't just limit yourself.
Like
nahi, mujhe to 6 mahine mein nikalna hai. No, try to give your best.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, do good work.
Exactly. If you are an entrepreneur, you would want your employees to give their best, right? Be responsible about their work and everything, right? Treat your company as their own company and work as hard as you want them to be. So how can you be so indifferent and not participate enough, just thinking that I might leave the company, right?
The general experience as it stands is, if you don't get positive feedback for your work currently, you lose motivation to do any better.
Exactly. And I think I was super motivated, and I actually gained so much confidence when I saw my career or journey grow from intern to strategist to graphic designer to senior designer to heading a team and stuff like that, right? It's a growth within a 1.5 year of span. It's a good growth I see in myself, right? And that's what gave me a boost. That's what gave me a path that I can walk onto and be proud of. So, and that's what actually led me to an interesting idea of opening my own creative studio. Then I, as a person, or as a about 10-year-old Avni, won't have even thought of opening something of my own, right? So I think it's so much more important than just opening a startup like this to work under someone, or do something very hands-on. So you learn these basic things and value your team, right? That's the most important thing I personally learned, that unless and until you value your team, you're not gonna get valuable content out of it.
You said age doesn't matter. It's never too late or never too soon to start a startup. I agree with that. A lot of examples are famous on social media. Alex Hormozi, Gary Vee, and people who have failed multiple startups and then started something.
And yesterday only I was talking to one of my client.
Yeah.
He had almost 8 to 9 startups and everything failed, and still he's starting something new.
Yeah.
Right?
It's that ambition.
It's that ambition. It's that willingness to do something new, right? And frankly, I understand the demotivation once you might face once something doesn't work out. But it's okay if it doesn't work out. It's not meant to work out. Now you try to put more efforts into something that you can again put in efforts for. Right?
So age doesn't matter, but it is important to gain at least 1 or 1.5 year experience in a startup where you get to learn a lot of things, especially because in a startup you have to wear multiple hats at a time, which is something that is sort of exemplified when you are an entrepreneur, where you have to wear more hats and wear them confidently and do a good job. So you need to have 1 year of experience. And your suggestion was also to learn how to co-work and coexist with people, not just your colleagues, but like people, clients, your staff, everyone. You have to manage people and how you are with people.
I think that's the most difficult job, and
that is extremely difficult, right? Yeah.
Wear a hat
even
off.
if in today's society, there are a lot of people that are ambiverts, introverts, and you come up with a lot of anxieties and a lot of things that hold you back from socializing. You have to take all of that, put that out of your path to become an entrepreneur, right? It is more difficult for others, like it's more difficult than both of us can actually imagine, but it's, do you choose your ambition or do you let your fears hold you back?
I mean, frankly, for me, it was equally difficult. Reason being, I was very much an introvert. Initially, when I used to talk to a client, not in person, just video call, my hands used to sweat. My hands used to be like watery. If I just squeeze my hand, I am pretty sure the sweat would drip down. I used to be so nervous getting on calls with them on just Google Meet or any online place, right? It's not even one-on-one meeting, nothing. I was so scared of handshake if I'm meeting one-on-one because my hand would be so sweaty. And I used to just keep wiping on my jeans or whatever I'm wearing so that if I'm shaking my hand, it does not feel sticky and all that stuff. Yeah. So I'd be that scared. And being a person who had personality issues, image issues, numerous things, having come out of that and still try to be confident. I don't know if I was confident back then, but now I'm pretty much okay with talking to people, meeting new people. And that's when I went to networking event as well. And the reason I couldn't again go alone is because I feel again I'll be very nervous.
No, I mean, like there was a tactical advantage that we realized.
There was an advantage, definitely, like networking with more people.
That was,
But another tactical advantage for me was to not be alone and feel more comfortable around the space. At least one person is the one I know.
I've seen that side of growth in both of us, especially you more than me. Like, I have been a lot more outgoing than I thought I was. Like, I realized this now. But when it came to you, you were one with less words and closer circle. So seeing you go out there with the confidence to talk someone, having the ability to turn clients, that is something, yes, that's been truly inspiring. So
yeah, I think it's not
kudos for that.
Thank you, but it's not just me being confident in myself. I think the people around me definitely has hand in that. My parents, who made me feel that I can do it, who were proud of me with every single step I took. My friends, my very close friends, and even the people who I thought were my friends and are not, they also gave me a level of confidence because I learned something from it, right? And you do gain confidence when all these things happen, when you don't mean it to happen, when you don't have any intention of it, but it happens, right? And then you start becoming a person who does not really care about those small things. I was a person who used to care every small piece of thing, right? And still I'm a person who would be okay with things but never just forget things, right? I would never forget what happened, but I'll be just make peace with it. I was like, okay, fine, whatever it is, let it be, right? But I can never go back to it and be like, oh, it's okay, I forgive you and it's fine, wala scene. Okay, so that sort of thing gave me, I think 2 to 3 years. A lot of things happened with me personally or professionally as well.
What else would you suggest someone who's planning to switch? What else would you suggest for that person to pay at close attention to keep in mind and not just leave it up to fate?
I think the major thing everyone fears of is the cash flow or the financial
big scare.
Exactly. And the reason I suggested that you need to work in a startup, freelance before starting an entrepreneurship journey, could also add up to the cash flow reason. When you work in a startup, try to save so that eventually when you're starting your own freelancing journey, especially don't just start freelancing journey unless and until you have 6 months saved up for yourself. A lot of people have their parents, what do you call it? Backing. A lot of people have their parents backing, or just someone who can back them up in difficult situation, but a lot of people don't, and that's what their major fear is, right? And 80% of the people are like that, who has this major fear of cash flow or financial decisions or financial stability, if there'll be or not. So I feel this process that I followed made me personally a self-dependent being who had enough cash flow to survive for nearly 1.5 years, who had enough cash flow to start a business or an agency. So I would suggest start freelancing or just completely jump into freelancing from your 9 to 5 job once you have approximately 4 to 6 months of saved up income. And once your freelancing is also nicely going and everything is good, shift into that and then start growing your freelancing into your entrepreneurship journey. And I suggest, if I'm not sure about others, see, if you want to start an IT company and stuff like that, you cannot just freelance randomly and start it, right? So it's very, I mean, like,
a lot of opportunities now
and
growing.
But that time it wasn't there, right? And freelancing is also a very new trend.
I mean, it's about do whatever you can right now, have a bigger goal in mind, but you need to have certain financial backing. Even if your parents are there to provide for you, there still comes an age where you have to become self-independent.
Correct.
If you want to buy clothes tomorrow, and you can't always go back to your parents for some things. You just need to be able to go like, okay, you know what, I want to spend this.
Expectations also that our parents would have eventually when you turn 22, when you've passed your UG, like, ab hamara bachcha self sufficient ho gaya hai. So that also makes our parents proud. And for me growing or doing stuff, what was just, I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but it was a good motivation for me that I wanted my parents to be proud ultimately. As far as cash flow is considered, when you're starting a business, I feel like when you are already setting up a business and have a team, you need to have easily 1 to 1.5 year of cash flow set by you, so that you can take care of bonuses, increments. There are a lot of factors, right? If you have we had to buy a camera out of nowhere. In just one day, we bought a camera which was 3 to 4 lakhs cost on us. And how did we do that? Because I had a cash flow maintained in my journal, right? If I didn't, then we would be stuck, right? We would have been stuck. We couldn't do anything. And that for a business is a very harsh step to take. You can't get investors in one day. Who would you ask 3 to 4 lakhs suddenly?
You can't.
You can't. And that's so much more important. I feel in our meetup, right? So we had these small group activities one of my group mate, he said, so we were talking about this cash flow only. He's like, अच्छा अगर saved up नहीं है, खत्म हो जाता है, investors भी नहीं मिल रहे, तो छोड़ दो company. But you can't do that.
I mean,
you have grown a company from 0 to 20. How can you leave it like that? And that's where a lot of people get into mental stress, depression, and all these things. So that is where your planning comes in, right?
Yeah.
Even if a family or parents can support you, a lot of time they cannot just take out 3 lakh or 4 lakh out of their pocket. And you cannot depend on someone, and you cannot expect an investor or your angel investor to come suddenly like a tooth fairy and give you that much money, right? You cannot. So that's the reason why I swear by planning and cash flow management and having a financial advisor. Since beginning, even before I started my entrepreneurship journey, I always had a financial advisor with me. Even though it was my dad, he's great at financing and everything. So I had him, fortunately, but a lot of people don't. But find out who can be a financial advisor. And it's not just taking care of money, it's also about how to break your money systematically, how to make sure that you put together a journal that helps you with your taxes and everything. Even if you're freelancing, if your amount is more than 6 lakh or 7 lakh, you have to pay taxes, right? So that also you need to understand how to pay, where to pay, so you don't pay extra taxes. So to sum it up, the 4 key takeaways we'll have from for entrepreneurs who are looking to shift from, as you were saying, the 22-year-old who wants to start their own business, how that person go about it. I feel the first very important thing is that you need to have at least 1 or 1.5 year of experience working in a startup, getting your hands dirty in whatever possible things that you can, because startup gives you that opportunity to do that. And second point sort of coexist with the first one. You learn how to talk to people, you learn how to be a good manager, you learn so many new things that just starting a startup won't teach you, right? Learn how to coexist with people, learn how to build a team, learn how to work in team, and learn how to keep your team or people happy. Because when you're an employee, you understand the pain points of employee, and when you're an entrepreneur, you know the pain points of employee, so you don't be so harsh on them as well, right? So it's like putting yourself into their shoes in a very physical and natural form, right? And the third one, and the most important one, is personal financing. You need to, if you're switching from your 9 to 5 to freelancing also, you need to have at least 6 months of saved up income, no matter what. And when you're shifting from freelancing to your startup or being an entrepreneur, or 9 to 5 to an entrepreneur, you need to have at least 1.5 year of cash flow running for not your personal purpose only, but for your team, for your bonuses, for your incentive, for your software expenses, for if you are into production, and then your production equipments and all the other necessary things, right? And it's not just about physical expenses, also about technical expenses that you face when you are doing this, right? You never know when you need to buy something which is on heavier expense, right? So you need to have at least 1.5 year of cash flow running, so you don't stress about those financial situation when you're trying to build your startup, you're trying to generate more leads, so your focus doesn't deviate from this. And I feel like there would be one of the most important, have someone who could be a financial advisor if you're not good at financing and money. If that's so, I feel like you need to have someone who can tell you better about taxes, about how to manage your cash flow, how to go about everything. And in my case, it was my dad. Probably in your case, it could be your CA, your friend or someone, but never be scared to ask for that help. So these would be the 5 points that I would suggest anyone to look into if they're starting very new into entrepreneurship. I understood this in a very beginning of my journey, and the reason being, I actually worked under 2 startups, and that helped me understand that these are the 5 main important points that I wanted to understand before I get into anything. And so, yeah, enough. How much will I speak?
That's a great way to sum up this entire podcast. I think I couldn't have said it any better. And I think this is where we'll end our first ever podcast episode of Crafted, and we have a lot more to discuss in the upcoming episodes, and we have a lot more to cover in terms of just starting a startup. So if you're anyone interested in entering into an entrepreneurial journey of your own, or following along with two people building a niche creative studio, follow along, hit the subscribe button, like and share this podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.